team like Kyrie and KD, or the Lake Show with King James and AD. Wish I could match him up with the bad boys from the 80s, but no black and white, I need that in HD. HenDawgz.
Yo, what's good, y'all? It's your boy HenDawgz, and we back to it. You know how we do it. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Wilt Chamberlain's beef was the result of two GOATs vying for one pedestal. Hey man, who y'all got? Who y'all got out of Wilt or Kareem? I think more people probably is gonna say Kareem because of the championships and him being an all-time leading scorer. Like, Kareem has some stuff that Wilt wishes he could have had, but Kareem also had a pretty good team. He had Magic. He had, a really good Showtime Lakers team that Wilt never had. Wilt was always just the best player by far on his team and never really had too much help. But before we get into this video, make sure y'all subscribe to the channel. We are on the way to 10K. Make sure y'all like this video. If y'all like this video, go ahead and write something in the comments here. Let me know who y'all picking. Who y'all picking out of Kareem or Wilt, man. But I think this is gonna be a really good video. This is one of my toxic videos. But yeah, this is my beef video. I think I done did maybe like 3 or 4 from the Secret Base YouTube channel where it goes into different beefs, and some are a lot bigger than others, some aren't really beefs for real, but it's always just like two people kind of going against each other, and that's what this one is. So let's get into it. We got Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Wilt Chamberlain's beef was the result of two GOATs vying for one pedestal. Damn, that's a long ass title. Let's get it.
Wilt Chamberlain and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar are pillars of NBA history. Two GOATs, no debate about it. 10 years between them, they started out as pals. But when they became peers in the NBA, there was no friendship to speak of. Instead, there were constant comparisons, jealousies, hatreds, and personal attacks through autobiography after autobiography.
Oh, word?
Before Twitter, you had to get a publisher if you wanted to talk trash. Wilt Chamberlain was a marvel of athleticism and strength, setting millions of records with bone-shattering dunks and smooth fadeaways. In 60,
those stats are crazy though. Like okay, Kareem had the longevity, which is what I stopped the video for to talk about. But then that just caught my attention on just the single season numbers that Wilt had was wild. But it's crazy to think that Kareem played with Wilt Chamberlain, and also I think he retired he retired when Jordan was almost in the league, so he almost played with Wilt Chamberlain and Michael Jordan. Like, that's crazy to think about, the longevity of Kareem, man. I gotta take into account when, trying to figure out which one was better.
62, he averaged 50 points a game and scored 100 points in a single game. And folks, he did more than score. His rookie year, he averaged 27 rebounds a game.
27?
And in 1968, he led the league in assists as a center. The NBA changed some rules because they decided Wilt was so good it was unfair. But he only won 2 titles in his 14-year career, which, when he was playing, defined him more than the metric ton of accomplishments we've gone over. He was labeled a loser, never given the recognition you'd think would be heaped at his feet.
Oh, wow.
For example, the year he scored 100 points in a game and averaged 50 points per game, he was not MVP. Bill Russell was.
Wow.
For the majority of his NBA career, he was compared to the Celtics center, who took the role of...
He was that much bigger than Bill Russell? No way was Wilt Chamberlain that much bigger than Bill Russell. I could have sworn it was a little bit closer, so I see why Wilt was probably better than Bill Russell.
Of his NBA career, he was compared to the Celtics center, who took the role of winner.
Red.
He had 11 titles to Wilt's 2.
Cigar.
And head-to-head, Russell usually came out on top. In retirement, Wilt spoke to that loser label during an interview with Bob Costas.
Was Wilt the loser? And that pointed me.
Never admit what bothers you. It just gives your enemies an easy avenue of attack. Speaking of enemies, let's get to know the other half of this beef. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Kareem was more of a finesse player than a tough guy. The sky hook was his weapon as he took over the NBA in the 70s and 80s. Like Wilt, his dominance caused rule changes. The NCAA banned dunking because Kareem was too good at it. Also like Wilt, Kareem's resume does not fit on one page. Though there was a key difference between the two. Their relationship began on good terms. At age 15, Kareem, named Lou Alcindor at the time, met Wilt, and Wilt took Lou under his wing. He let the kid hang around with him and his friends at jazz clubs, hearts games, and horse races. Alcindor was completely in awe. Who wouldn't be? A teenager hanging out with an NBA player? When I was a teenager, I'd be in awe of hanging out with a slightly older teenager. Wilt gave Alcindor 2 suits, which Alcindor wanted to keep even though they were sweat-stained and kind of gross. His mom threw them out. Alcindor's first crush was one of Wilt's girlfriends.
What?
Oh, by the way, Wilt had a lot of girlfriends.
20.
But as Alcindor grew up...
Alright, I gotta ask y'all this. This is outside of the Kareem and Wilt debate, but do y'all believe that? Kids, if y'all watching, plug your ears. This ain't for y'all. But do y'all think that he had 20,000 encounters? Like, I heard it's a lot of things that they say Wilt did that a lot of people kind of, don't know if it's true. And I don't know if that one is true because I get it. Wilt was the man. He was doing his thing, but 20,000 women and not have one kid? He doesn't have any kids. So the math not really adding up with that, but let me know what y'all think. All right, kids, y'all can
He
listen.
sort of grew away from Chamberlain. As a young man, he had a few formative experiences that made him into an outspoken advocate on social justice and black issues. At age 17, he witnessed police brutality during the Harlem race riots of 1964. 3 years later, as a college student at UCLA, he attended the Muhammad Ali Summit, a meeting of vocal black athletes and political figures throwing support behind Ali and his refusal to be drafted to the Vietnam War. In 1968, Alcindor and other black athletes boycotted the Olympics in a protest of racism. Wilt Chamberlain's politics were different. He was a Republican who very publicly supported Nixon. In 68, the same year Alcindor boycotted the Olympics, Chamberlain attended Martin Luther King Jr.'s funeral with Nixon. So, when Alcindor got to the NBA in 69, he wasn't so interested in being friends with Wilt, which irritated Wilt for a number of reasons. Nobody likes to be rejected, and also he felt unfairly judged, and put it kind of bluntly. Safe to say, off the court, they had a pretty icy relationship, and then they had to face each other on the court. The 1971 Western Conference Finals was technically between the Bucks and Lakers, but the real battle was Alcindor versus Chamberlain. When the Lakers earned entry to the Western Conference Finals, the press wasn't that interested in Wilt's 25-point, 19-rebound, 9-assist performance. They just wanted to know how Wilt felt about facing Alcindor next, which Chamberlain didn't love. This brief interaction actually speaks to a second reason for early beef. So, remember how Wilt spent the majority of his career being compared to Bill Russell? Well, now Russell had retired, and Wilt was being measured against the new guy.
I'm about to start over with Kareem.
Wilt was denied his chance to just be king, to have people say, wow, look how good he is, no need to compare him to anyone at all, let's just enjoy him. Press during the series focused on which center outplayed the other. The big men split games 1 and 2, even though the Bucks won both. Game 3 was Chamberlain's, and afterwards he talked a little trash against Alcindor. He implied he always outplayed Alcindor. Look at the kid's shooting percentage. In Game 4, Alcindor played like he cut Wilt's comments out of the newspaper, taped them up in his locker, and stared at them for the entire 48 hours between games. He shot 70% from the field, shutting down Wilt's shooting percentage argument. Game 5 saw Wilt get the better of Alcindor.
So what was the age discrepancy between these two? Like right here, Wilt looked like he about 30. And Kareem like he about 21, but I'm not sure exactly what the age discrepancy was. So somebody let me know.
But his team lost the series. Once again, he played well, but ended up the loser. Lou and the Bucks, on the other hand, went on to be the big winners.
On championship.
I should mention that, okay, Lou beat Wilt, but Lou's in his prime and Wilt is 34. That
34.
has to be taken into account. Oh, no? It doesn't? At least not for some people at the time, including venerable Bill Russell. But the battle would rage again in the following year's Western Conference Finals. Alcindor had announced he converted to Islam and changed his name to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, which turned some fans off him and on to Wilt. The Wilt-Kareem matchup was the draw of the playoffs.
That's what I was going to say. So do y'all think around this time when they were playing, you pretty much kind of had to pick? Like you couldn't really be a big fan of both because they both kind of stood for the, I don't want to say the opposite, but Kareem was very pro-black, and I'm changing my name, and I'm gonna go to Muhammad Ali's event, and be front and center with them to talk about police brutality and all these things. Where on the other hand, Wilt was out here partying and going to Martin Luther King's funeral with they said Nixon. Like, so he had white friends, which there's nothing wrong with it, but it's just like you pretty much seem like you would have to pick. Like, you have to be like, all right, I'm on Wilt's side, where we about to just have fun and network and be this cool media guy and talk to everybody and have that stance. Or you have to be the Kareem, where you don't talk to nobody. I hate the media. I don't want to talk about this. I don't respect certain players in the league because of the way they act, and I don't know. It's like it's a tough thing, man. But let me know what y'all think about that.
Expected to be more exciting than the finals. The Lakers and Bucks split games 1 through 4, but the center duel was one-sided.
Both killers on the court, though.
Kareem applied, Wilt was washed up. I don't know why players trash each other before the end of the series. Game 5 and 6, Wilt played to make Kareem eat his words. The Lakers GM called Game 6 Chamberlain's greatest game as a Laker from start to finish.
Oh, wow.
He blocked 10 shots, 3 of which were Kareem's. Oh yeah, and he clinched a trip to the finals, which the Lakers won. In the locker room, he received a congratulatory phone call from Kareem, like a politician receiving a concession call on election night.
Okay.
Wilt was a winner for that one moment in time. Winning in 72 wasn't a final verdict in the big man debate. Comparisons continued even after Wilt retired, and Kareem usually came out on top. Even the hard numbers didn't sway the argument Wilt's way. And it's not like retired Wilt could defend himself on the court, so he had to find other ways to defend himself / attack Kareem. In his 1973 autobiography, Chamberlain said Kareem's rebounding was lacking and put him in a class below Nate Thurman, Bill Russell, and just like some other.
Shout out to Nate Thurman. He went to Bowling Green, the same college that I went to. Whenever I would go to school, and I would always see his name just like all throughout the arena and everything. So it's good to see that he gets showcased. Even Wilt is talking about him. So shout out to Nate Thurman.
Guys, I don't know, whoever else is around. But the personal slights weren't what bothered Kareem about Wilt's book. In a totally different chapter, Wilt said he found black women to be less sophisticated, socially and sexually, than white women. Kareem absolutely hated that and said so publicly, which did nothing to slow Wilt's criticism of him, which he kept up throughout Kareem's entire career. Kareem didn't respond for a while.
Terrible transitional player?
Maybe because he felt his play was enough of a rebuttal. Wilt's opinions on Kareem were not widely held. Abdul-Jabbar did finally fight back in 1983 with his autobiography. He took plenty of swipes at Chamberlain's play and reinforced the narrative that Wilt was a loser. He also provided further insight into their falling out. For Kareem, it all went back to comments in Wilt's autobiography, not the comments about him, but the ones saying black women were inferior to white women. It offended everything Kareem stood for and believed in. To Kareem, Wilt was a traitor, and this beef was about more than basketball.
It's tough.
But, basketball was still a part of it. A year later, Kareem broke Chamberlain's career scoring record amid celebrations, praise, love, and affection from everybody except Wilt. I mean, Chamberlain went to Kareem's ceremony and tried to play the part of gracious torch passer, but instead came off kinda jealous and petty. He said Kareem deserved the honor, which, is just a statement of fact based on numbers, not really a compliment. And I get being like, hey, where was the fanfare when I set records? Because, remember, Wilt got minimal recognition when he did cool stuff, and even got called selfish when he scored a lot. But he went further than just pointing out the disparity. He denigrated Kareem's accomplishment, saying,
you were considered selfish because you were scoring and not winning. Kareem was scoring and winning. So it's a difference. Of course people aren't going to call Kareem selfish when he got Magic out there passing him the ball and all he got to do is score. When on the opposite end, when you scoring 50 and 25 but not even getting MVP, not even winning the finals, it make it a little tough. But I get it though. I get it for him not getting all that praise because his team just wasn't as good. I mean, it is what it is. I don't think you should be jealous about it, but I don't know.
Well, it's not Bill Russell's rebounding record, which Wilt broke. And
He
also,
be hating,
he
though.
casually dropped the opinion that he was still
Wilt is a hater.
Kareem. His position did not soften 6 years later. In fact, it took on a life of its own, with Wilt insisting his record would stand if he'd been concentrating on scoring later in his career. So sure, he comes off a little petty, a little jealous, but that probably makes breaking the record all the sweeter for Kareem. Tired of years of undermining comments, Kareem went after Wilt in his next autobiography, published in 1990. He wrote an open letter to Wilt Chamberlain.
What?
Wordplay. The letter spanned many topics, all of them mean.
No.
But the thesis of the 3-page letter was...
Hold on.
All of...
This is what they was on? I was just taking advantage of your weak defensive skills. So when I dropped those 50 points on you at the forum, people are still trying to figure out where you disappeared to in that series. That probably would have reminded you of your own emptiness at the free throw line. What? Oh yeah, it was some beef going on. And I think another thing that makes it a good point is Kareem played 6 extra years. 6 more years than Wilt. So, of course you should be able to break those records, but still, that's still impressive. Why you didn't play 20 years, Wilt? Was you too focused on other stuff? Like, what happened? Like, shout out to Kareem for being mentally disciplined and in shape and, you know, having the love for the game to play for 20 years.
The mean. But the thesis of the 3-page letter was Wilt's jealous. Not because Kareem earned more respect and adoration, but because Kareem was a winner and Wilt was a loser. Kareem closed by saying, "People will remember that I worked with my teammates and helped us win. You'll be remembered as a whining crybaby and a quitter, stats and all."
That's wild.
Stats and all. Kareem was attempting to pull the rug out from under Wilt's legacy with the stats don't matter if you don't have titles argument. It wasn't a new argument, which made it worse. Kareem was lending expertise and credence to an opinion that haunted Chamberlain, being a loser. A year later, Wilt published his second autobiography.
They just writing books
pretended the
against
letter
each other.
didn't bother him. Why do I say pretended? Because in his book, over and over again, Chamberlain argues he was better than Kareem, even though Kareem got more recognition. He also kind of went off on Kareem's farewell tour. In Kareem's last year, at each final away game, opposing teams held a pre-game ceremony and gave him some pretty sweet gifts, while the rival crowd stood to applaud him. Chamberlain called the tour a contrived fiasco full of material bullshit. He said Kareem should have made charitable donations instead of accepting luxury goods. The extent to which he criticized the tour sounds a bit like sour grapes. But hey, Wilt didn't get a Rolls Royce when he retired, so why can't he at least have some sour grapes? As time wore on, this beef cooled down. With both guys retired, they had less opportunity to talk about each other. And most famous people only get to write one autobiography, so they were already kind of pushing it. In the late 90s, they did a commercial together, and according to Kareem, put their feud behind them on set. He claimed he never hated Wilt, just his politics, which I don't know if I totally believe, but if he believes it, I'll drop the issue. When Wilt passed away in 1999, Kareem had nothing but praise for the Dipper. This beef is unique because external factors created it. If we think of this beef as a full cow, stick with me here, the cow had 2 hearts. For Kareem, the heart was a difference in politics and an offensive, generalized racial statement from his one-time mentor. For Wilt, the heart was the imbalance of respect from fans, press, and the league. The rest of the cow, the muscles, the ligaments, and spots and hooves, were generated by how each guy responded to their heart. The post-game trash talk, the decades of undermining comments, the dueling autobiographies, etc. And while there was an entire cow of beef between these 2 phenomenal athletes, it did not hurt their legacies. Wilt's loser stigma was lost to the hard numbers and his tome of accomplishments. The guy's a legend. And Kareem's legacy stands pat as one of the greatest ever.
MVP.
Wilt's digs were minority opinion at the time and are non-existent opinion now. Their legacies survived the beef because goats can't be taken down by a cow.
Okay. Great video. Let's do a round of applause for that one. I think that might have been one of my favorite beef videos that I've done so far. But I hope y'all enjoyed it. Make sure y'all subscribe to the channel if y'all haven't already. If y'all want to see more videos like this, let me know. Go ahead and like this video. If you like this video, go ahead and write something in the comments. Let me know if you're the GM, you that's watching this video right now. If you got the #1 pick and you only can choose between Wilt or Kareem, who you picking? But I appreciate y'all like always.